Hello, Internet. I am...
the other Emily.
And I am not Emily.
We've really reached a point of, like, too many Emilys and everyone else is just not Emily. Yeah, so.
This will either be our first pod back after summer break, or the second pod back after summer break.
Alright.
We don't know yet. If you're listening to this, you know, but as of recording this, we don't know.
But we're back with some, time to get spooky. It's spooky time. Yeah, vibes. Stories.
Always.
That's true. That's true.
That's how it always is on this channel. No, it is still the summer.
Yeah.
You can probably hear the cicadas.
My favorite joke is, it's the middle of June, it's time to get spooky. It's like, it's the middle of June. Yeah, time to get spooky. It's always time to get spooky. So we are here with a short story today that dates back to about 1903, which I found in an anthology called Ghosts.
Very simple and straight to the point.
Yep. The byline is a treasury of chilling tales, old and new. The hilarious backstory of this is we have, in case you did not know, I work at I know you know, but the listeners, I work at a living history museum, and we have a research library. I didn't have any sewing or anything to do with my brain that day, so wandered down to the research library looking for books on death and mourning in the 19th century or dressmaking in the 19th century, and just found a book simply titled Ghosts.
Incredible.
So I just said, I want to read Ghosts. And it turns out it is a collection of various and sundry early 1900s and earlier spooky tales. Cool. So the excerpt we are bringing you today is by one Mary Wilkins Freeman, who was writing primarily in the 1880s and the 1890s. That's when she really got her start and got quite popular. She had a number of short story anthologies, over 24 published. The most well-known works are called A Humble Romance and Other Stories, and A New England Nun and Other Stories. I'm very curious about that one. So born in 1852 and died in 1930, and she combined domestic realism with supernaturalism and often wrote all about New England life. So she also was a feminist and demonstrated her feminist values through her stories and was one of the progenitors of the strong female lead. So she did not like the idea of women having particularly prescribed roles, and she hated the common trope at the time that women were weak and needed help. So her female characters often broke those, and she challenged contemporary ideas of female roles, values, and their relationships in society. So she was actually really progressive and was like girl power in the 1890s.
Wow. I was looking at your note here because it says she was born in Massachusetts.
Yes.
When I was doing the romantics bracket, every single one of the Americans in the bracket was from Massachusetts. Emily Dickinson, Nathaniel Hawthorne. I think Poe was also born in Massachusetts.
I believe
he didn't end his life there, but I believe he was born there. And then I was thinking about, Lovecraft was also from New England, not from Massachusetts, but New England.
So what is it about New England? Which also, Stephen King writes, all of his stories take place in New England. He writes about New England quite a bit, so...
I recently read a Stephen King novel. I don't remember exactly where it took place.
Which one was it? I might know.
Joyland.
I don't know that one.
It's a newer one.
Okay, I don't know that one. I haven't read New King. But yeah, there's apparently something about A, Massachusetts, and or B, New England.
Yeah.
So.
Ghosts in there.
Yeah. Salem, Massachusetts, which there's a lot of history there.
Hawthorne was from Salem.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah. He actually had ties to the witch trials.
Oh. I have to look that up.
From his ancestors.
Okay. We didn't burn witches, we burned women. I'm curious about... That's just what my brain jumped into. That has nothing to do with anything, probably.
Listen, if we wanted to start talking about the witch trials, we could be here for a whole other segment, but that's not what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah. We are here to talk about atmospheric horror, which apparently most of the fear lies in what is not said, as per the foreword from the collectors of this novel. So, as we said, the story dates back to 1903. So, puffed sleeves. We were longing for puffed sleeves in the late 1800s into the early 1900s. We are very squarely in the the Edwardian era. But if you're imagining Titanic, you're a little late in fashion, but closer than mid-century. My brain is I'm all caught in the 1830s today.
Yeah, mid-century, to me, that's American Civil War era, where everyone's got the giant hoop skirts.
Yep, the advent of the cage crinoline.
And then you move on to the 1870s, 1880s,
and
where
it's bustles.
Yeah, so we're getting past that, and the dresses are even more streamlined.
Yes, very You've got the big pigeon front breast, so that kind of like low sloping stomach. If you're imagining Samantha, the American Girl doll, that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it takes place in 1904.
1904, yep.
Because all the original books, the years all ended before. But now they don't anymore.
Yeah, like I think only one person bucked the trend early on, and then we've got Caroline during the War of 1812, and I went, no, you ruined it.
Not every important historical event in the United States conveniently took place in a year ending in 4, so...
Yeah, well, it was supposed to be force. Everybody was a 4. So either way, yeah, if you're picturing Samantha the American Girl doll, you're right on the money. All right, The Wind in the Rosebush by Mary Wilkins Freeman. Ford Village has no railroad station, being on the other side of the river from Porter's Falls and accessible only by the ford which gives it its name and a ferry line. The ferry boat was waiting when Rebecca Flint got off the train with her bag and lunch basket. When she and her small trunk were safely embarked, she sat stiff and straight and calm in the ferry boat as it shot swiftly and smoothly across the stream. There was a horse attached to a light country wagon on board, and he pawed the deck uneasily. His owner stood near with a wary eye on him, although he was chewing with as dully reflective an expression as a cow. Beside Rebecca sat a woman of about her own age, who kept looking at her with furtive curiosity. Her husband, short and stout and saturnine, stood near her. Rebecca paid no attention to either of them. She was tall, spare, and pale, the type of a spinster, yet with rudimentary lines and expressions of matronhood. She all unconsciously held her shawl rolled up in a canvas bag on her left hip, as if it had been a child. She wore a settled frown of dissent at life, but it was the frown of a mother who regarded life as a forward child rather than as an overwhelming fate. The other woman continued staring at her. She was mildly stupid, except for an overdeveloped curiosity which made her at times sharp beyond belief. Her eyes glittered, red spots came on her flaccid cheeks, and she kept opening her mouth to speak, making little abortive motions. Finally, she could endure it no longer, and nudged Rebecca boldly. "A pleasant day," said she. Rebecca looked at her and nodded coldly. "Yes, very," she assented. "Have you come far?" "I have come from Michigan." "Oh," said the woman with awe, "it's a long way," she remarked presently. "Yes, it is," said Rebecca conclusively. Still, the other woman was not daunted. There was something which she determined to know, possibly roused thereto by a vague sense of incongruity with the other's appearance. "It's a long ways to come and leave a family," she remarked with painful slyness. "I ain't got no family to leave," returned Rebecca shortly. "Then you ain't—" "No, I ain't." "Oh," said the woman. Rebecca looked straight ahead at the race of the river. It was a long ferry. Finally, Rebecca herself waxed unexpectedly loquacious. She turned to the other woman and inquired if she knew John Dent's widow who lived in Ford Village. "Her husband died about 3 years ago," she said by way of detail. The woman started violently. She turned pale, then she flushed. She cast a strange glance at her husband, who was regarding both women with a sort of solid keenness. "Yes, I guess I do," faltered the woman finally. "Well, his first wife was my sister," said Rebecca, with the air of one imparting important intelligence. "Was she?" responded the other woman feebly. She glanced at her husband with an expression of doubt and terror, and she shook his head forbiddingly. "I'm going to see her and take my niece Agnes home with me," said Rebecca. The woman gave such a violent start that she noticed it. "What is the matter?" she asked. "Nothing, I guess," replied the woman with her eyes on her husband, who was slowly shaking his head like a Chinese toy. "Is my niece sick?" asked Rebecca with quick suspicion. "No, she ain't sick," replied the woman with alacrity. Then she caught her breath again. "Ought to have grown up real pretty if she takes after my sister. She was a real pretty woman," Rebecca said wistfully. "Yes, I guess she did grow up pretty," replied the woman in a trembling voice. "What kind of a woman is this second wife?" The woman gazed at her husband's warning face. She continued to gaze at him while she replied in a choking voice to Rebecca. "I guess she's a nice woman," she replied. I don't know. I guess I don't see much of her." "I felt kind of hurt that John married again so quick," said Rebecca. "But I suppose he wanted his house kept and Agnes wanted care. I wasn't so situated that I could take her when her mother died. I had my own mother to care for, and I was school teaching. Now mother has gone and my uncle died 6 months ago and left me quite a little property, and I've come for Agnes. I guess she'll be glad to go with me, though I suppose her stepmother is a good woman and has always done for her." The man's warning shake at his wife was fairly portentous. "I guess so," said she. "John always wrote that she was a beautiful woman," said Rebecca. Then the ferry boat grated on the shore. John Dent's widow has sent a horse and wagon to meet her sister-in-law. When the woman and her husband went down the road, on which Rebecca in the wagon with her trunk soon passed them, she said reproachfully, "Seems as if I ought to have told her, Thomas." "Let her find it out herself," replied the man. Don't you go burning your fingers in other folks' pudding, Maria." "Do you suppose she'll see anything?" asked the woman with a spasmodic shudder and a terrified roll of her eyes. "See?" returned her husband with solid scorn. "Better be sure there's anything to see." "Oh, Thomas, they say—" "Lord, ain't you found out what they say is mostly lies?" "But if it should be true, then she's a nervous woman. She might be scared enough to lose her wits," said his wife, staring uneasily after Rebecca's erect figure in the wagon disappearing over the crest of the hilly road. "Wits that's so easy upset ain't worth much," declared the man. "You keep out of it, Maria." Rebecca, in the meantime, rode on the wagon beside a flaxen-headed boy who looked, to her understanding, not very bright. She asked him the question, and he paid no attention. She repeated it, and he responded with a bewildered and incoherent grunt. Then she let him alone, after making sure that he knew how to drive straight. They had traveled about half a mile, past the village square, and gone a short distance beyond, when the boy drew up with a sudden "whoa" before a very prosperous-looking house. It had been one of the aboriginal cottages in the vicinity, small and white, with a roof extending on one side over a piazza, and a tiny little L jutting out in the rear on the right hand. Now the cottage was transformed by dormer windows, a bay window on the piazza-less side, a carved railing down from the front steps, and a modern hardwood door. "Is this John Dent's house?" asked Rebecca. The boy was as sparing of speech as a philosopher. His only response was in flinging the reins over the horse's back, stretching out one foot to the shaft and leaping out of the wagon, then going round to the rear for the trunk. Rebecca got out and went towards the house. Its white paint had a new gloss, its blinds were an immaculate apple green, the lawn was trimmed and as smooth as velvet, and it was dotted with scrupulous groups of hydrangeas and cannas. "I always understood that John Dent was well-to-do," Rebecca reflected comfortably. "I guess Agnes will have considerable. I've got enough, but it will come in handy for her schooling. She can have advantages." The boy dragged the trunk up the fine gravel walk, but before he reached the steps leading up to the piazza, for the house stood on a little terrace, the front door opened and a fair, frizzled head of very large and handsome woman appeared. She held up her black silk shirt, disclosing voluminous ruffles of starched embroidery, and waited for Rebecca. She smiled placidly, her pink, double-chinned face widened and dimpled, but her blue eyes were wary and calculating. She extended her hand as Rebecca climbed the steps. "This is Miss Flint, I suppose," said she. "Yes, ma'am," said Rebecca, noticing with bewilderment a curious expression compounded of fear and defiance on the other's face. "Your letter only arrived this morning," said Mrs. Dent in a steady voice. Her great face was a uniform pink, and her china blue eyes were at once aggressive and veiled with secrecy. "Yes, I hardly thought you'd get my letter," replied Rebecca. "I felt as if I could not wait to hear from you before I came. I supposed you would be so situated that you could have me a little while without putting you out too much, and from what John used to write me about his circumstances, and when I had money so unexpected, I felt as if I must come for Agnes. I suppose you will be willing to give her up. You know she's my own blood, and of course she's no relation to you, though you must have got attached to her. I know from her picture what a sweet girl she must be, and John always said she looked like her own mother, and Grace was a beautiful woman if she was my sister." Rebecca stopped and stared at the other woman in amazement and alarm. The great handsome blonde creature stood speechless, livid, gasping, with her hand to her heart, her lips parted in a horrible caricature of a smile. "Are you sick?" cried Rebecca, drawing near. "Don't you want me to get you some water?" Then Mrs. Dent recovered herself with a great effort. "It is nothing," she said. "I am subject to spells. I am over it now. Won't you come in, Miss Flint?" As she spoke, the beautiful, deep rose color suffused her face. Her blue eyes met her visitor's with the opaqueness of turquoise, with a revelation of blue, but a concealment of all behind. Rebecca followed her hostess in, and the boy, who had waited quite quiescently, climbed the steps with the trunk. But before they entered the door, a strange thing happened. On the upper terrace, close to the piazza post, grew a great rosebush, and on it, in the late season through though it was one small, perfect rose. Rebecca looked at it, and the other woman extended her hand with a quick gesture. "Don't you pick that rose!" she brusquely cried. Rebecca drew herself up with stiff dignity. "I ain't in the habit of picking other folks' roses without leave," said she. As Rebecca spoke, she started violently, and lost sight of her resentment, for something singular happened. Suddenly the rose bush was agitated violently, as if by a gust of wind, yet it was a remarkably still day. Not a leaf of the hydrangea standing on the terrace close to the rose trembled. "What on earth?" began Rebecca, and then she stopped with a gasp at the sight of the other woman's face. Although a face, it gave somehow the impression of a desperately clutched hand of secrecy. "Come in," she said in a harsh voice, which seemed to come forth from her chest with no intervention of the organs of speech. "Come into the house. I'm getting cold out here." "What makes that rosebush blow so when there isn't any wind?" asked Rebecca, trembling with vague horror, yet resolute. "I don't see as it is blowing," returned the woman calmly. As she spoke, indeed, the bush was quiet. "It was blowing," declared Rebecca. "It isn't now," said Mrs. Dent. "I can't try to account for everything that blows out of doors. I have too much to do." She spoke scornfully and confidently, with defiant, unflinching eyes, first on the bush, then on Rebecca, and led the way into the house. "It looked queer," persisted Rebecca, but she followed, and also the boy with the trunk. Rebecca entered an interior, prosperous, even elegant, according to her simple ideas. There were Brussels carpets, lace curtains, and plenty of brilliant upholstery and polished wood. "You're real nicely situated," remarked Rebecca, after she had come a little accustomed to her new surroundings, and the two women were seated at the tea table. Mrs. Dent stared with a hard complacency from behind her silver-plated service. "Yes, I be," said she. "You got all the things new?" said Rebecca hesitatingly, with a jealous memory of her dead sister's bridal furnishings. "Yes," said Mrs. Dent. "I was never one to want dead folks' things, and I had money enough of my own, so I wasn't beholden to John. I had the old duds put up at auction. They didn't bring much." "I suppose you saved some for Agnes. She'll want some of her poor mother's things when she is grown up," said Rebecca with some indignation. The defiant stare of Mrs. Dent's blue eyes waxed more intense. "There's a few things up garret," said she. "She'll be likely to value them," remarked Rebecca. As she spoke, she glanced at the window. "Isn't it most time for her to be coming home?" she asked. "Most time," answered Mrs. Dent carelessly. "But when she gets over to Addie Slocum's, she never knows when to come home." "Is Addie Slocum her intimate friend?" "Intimate as any." "Maybe we can have her come out to see Agnes when she's living with me," said Rebecca wistfully. "I suppose she'll be likely to be homesick at first." "Most likely," answered Mrs. Dent. "Does she call you mother?" Rebecca asked. "No, she calls me Aunt Emmeline," replied the other woman shortly. "When did you say you were going home?" "In about a week, I thought, if she can be ready to go so soon," answered Rebecca with a surprised look. She reflected that she would not remain a day longer than she could help after such an inhospitable look and question. "Oh, as far as that goes," said Mrs. Dent, "it wouldn't make any difference about her being ready. You could go home whenever you felt that you must, and she could come afterward." "Alone?" "Why not? She's a big girl now, and you don't have to change cars." "My niece will go home when I do, and not travel alone. And if I can't wait here for her, in the house that used to be her mother's and my sister's home, I'll go and board somewhere," returned Rebecca with warmth. "Oh, you can stay here as long as you want to. You're welcome," said Mrs. Dent. Then Rebecca started. "There she is!" she declared in a trembling, exultant voice. Nobody knew how she longed to see the girl. "Ah, she isn't as late as I thought she'd be," said Mrs. Dent. And again that curious, subtle change passed over her face. And again it settled to that stony impassiveness. Rebecca stared at the door, waiting for it to open. "Where is she?" she asked presently. "I guess she stopped to take off her hat in the entry," suggested Mrs. Dent. Rebecca waited. "Why don't she come? It can't take her all this time to take off her hat." For answer, Mrs. Dent rose with a stiff jerk and threw open the door. "Agnes!" she called. "Agnes!" Then she turned and eyed Rebecca. "She ain't there." "I saw her pass the window," said Rebecca in bewilderment. "You must have been mistaken." "I know I did," persisted Rebecca. "You couldn't have." "I did. I first saw a shadow go over to the ceiling, then I saw her in the glass there." She pointed to a mirror over the sideboard opposite. "And then the shadow passed the window." "How did she look in the glass?" "Little and light-haired, with the light hair kind of tossing over her forehead." "You couldn't have seen her." "Was that like Agnes?" "Like enough, but of course you didn't see her. You've been thinking so much about her that you thought you did." "You thought you did?" "I thought I saw a shadow pass the window, but I must have been mistaken. She didn't come in, or we would have seen her before now. I knew it was too early for her to get home from Addie Slocum's anyhow." When Rebecca went to bed, Agnes had not returned. Rebecca had resolved that she would not retire until the girl came, but she was very tired, and she reasoned with herself that she was foolish. Besides, Mrs. Dent suggested that Agnes might go to the church social with Addie Slocum. When Rebecca suggested that she be sent for and told that her aunt had come, Mrs. Dent laughed meaningly. "I guess you'll find out that a young girl ain't so ready to leave a sociable where there's boys just to see her aunt," said she. "She's too young," said Rebecca incredulously and indignantly. "She's 16, replied Mrs. Dent, "and she's always been great for the boys." "She's going to school 4 years after I get her before she thinks of boys," declared Rebecca. "We'll see," laughed the other woman. After Rebecca went to bed, she lay awake for a long time listening for the sound of girlish laughter and a boy's voice under the window. Then she fell asleep. The next morning she was down early. Mrs. Dent, who kept no servants, was busily preparing breakfast. "Don't Agnes help you about breakfast?" asked Rebecca. "No, I let her lay," replied Mrs. Dent shortly. "What time did she get home last night?" "She didn't get home. She stayed with Addie. She often does." "Without sending you word?" "Oh, she knew I wouldn't worry." "When will she be home?" "Oh, I guess she'll be along pretty soon." Rebecca was uneasy, but she tried to conceal it, for she knew of no good reason for uneasiness. What was there to occasion alarm in the face of one young girl staying overnight with another? She could not eat much breakfast. Afterward, she went out on the little piazza, although the hostess strove furtively to stop her. "Why don't you go out back of the house? It's real pretty, a view out over the river," said she. "I guess I'll go out here," replied Rebecca. She had a purpose, to watch for the absent girl. Presently, Rebecca came hustling into the house through the sitting room into the kitchen where Mrs. Dent was cooking. "The Rosebush!" she gasped. Mrs. Dent turned and faced her. "What of it?" "It's a-blowin'." "What of it?" "There isn't a mite of wind this morning." Mrs. Dent turned with an inimitable toss of her fair head. "If you think I can spend my time puzzling over such nonsense as—" she began, but Rebecca interrupted her with a cry and a rush to the door. "There she is now!" she cried. She flung the door wide open, and curiously enough, a breeze came in and her own gray hair tossed, and a paper blew off the table to the floor with a loud rustle. But there was nobody in sight. "There's nobody here," Rebecca said. She looked blankly at the other woman, who brought her rolling pin down on a slab of pie crust with a thud. "I didn't hear anybody," she said calmly. "I saw somebody pass that window." "You were mistaken again." "I know I saw somebody." "You couldn't have. Please shut that door." Rebecca shut the door. She sat down beside the window and looked out on the autumnal yard, with its little curve of footpath to the kitchen door. "What smells so strong of roses in this room?" she said presently. She sniffed hard. "I don't smell anything but these nutmegs." "It is not nutmeg." "I don't smell anything else." "Where do you suppose Agnes is?" "Oh, perhaps she has gone over the ferry to Porter's Falls with Addie. She often does. Addie's got an aunt over there, and Addie's got a cousin, a real pretty boy." "You suppose she's gone over there?" "Maybe. I wouldn't wonder." "When should she be home?" "Oh, not before afternoon." Rebecca waited with all the patience she could muster. She kept reassuring herself, telling herself that it was all natural, that the other woman could not help it, but she made up her mind if Agnes did not return that afternoon, she should be sent for. When it was 4 o'clock, she started up with resolution. She had been furtively watching the onyx clock on the sitting-room mantel. She had timed herself. She had said that if Agnes were not home by the time she should demand that she should be sent for. She rose and stood before Mrs. Dent, who looked up coolly from her embroidery. "I've waited just as long as I'm going to," she said. "I've come way from Michigan to see my own sister's daughter and take her home with me. I've been here ever since yesterday, 24 hours, and I haven't seen her. Now I'm going to. I want her sent for." Mrs. Dent folded her embroidery and rose. "Well, I don't blame you," she said. "It's high time she came home. I'll go right over and get her myself." Rebecca heaved a sigh of relief. She hardly knew what she had suspected or feared, but she knew that her position had been one of antagonism, if not accusation, and she was sensible of relief. "I wish you would," she said gratefully, and went back to her chair, while Mrs. Dent got her shawl and a little white head tie. "I wouldn't trouble you, but I do feel as if I couldn't wait any longer to see her," she remarked apologetically. "Oh, it ain't any trouble at all," said Mrs. Dent as she went out. "I don't blame you. You have waited long enough." Rebecca sat at the window watching breathlessly until Mrs. Dent came stepping through the yard alone. She ran to the door and saw, hardly noticing it this time, that the rosebush was again violently agitated, yet with no wind evident elsewhere. "Where is she?" she cried. Mrs. Dent laughed with stiff lips as she came up the steps over the terrace. "Girls will be girls," said she. "She's gone with Addie to Lincoln. Addie's got an uncle who's conductor on the train and lives there, and he's got 'em passes, and they're going to stay at Addie's Aunt Margaret's for a few days. Mrs. Slocum said that Agnes didn't have time to come over and ask me before the train went, and she took it on herself to say it would be all right, and—" "Why hadn't she been sent over to tell you?" Rebecca was angry, though not suspicious. She even saw no reason for her anger. "Oh, she was putting up grapes. She was coming over just as soon as she got the black off her hands. She heard I had company, and her hands were a sight. She was holding them over sulphur matches." "You say she's going to stay a few days?" repeated Rebecca dazedly. "Yes, till Thursday," Mrs. Slocum said. "How far is Lincoln from here?" "About 50 miles. It'll be a real treat to her. Mrs. Slocum's sister is a real nice woman." "It is going to make it pretty late about my going home." "If you don't feel as if you could wait, I'll get her ready and send her out just as soon as I can," Mrs. Dent said sweetly. "I'm going to wait," said Rebecca grimly. The two women sat down again, and Mrs. Dent took up her embroidery. Is there any sewing I can do for her? Rebecca asked finally in a desperate way. If I can get her sewing along some. Mrs. Dent arose with alacrity and fetched a mass of white from the closet. Here, she said, if you want to sew the lace on this nightgown. I was going to put her to it, but she'll be glad enough to get rid of it. She ought to have this one and one more before she goes. I don't like to send her away without some good underclothing. Rebecca snatched at the little white garment and sewed feverishly. That night she wakened from a deep sleep a little after midnight and lay a minute trying to collect her faculties and explain to herself what she was listening to. At last she discovered that it was the then popular strains of the Maiden's Prayer floating up through the floor from the piano in the sitting room below. She jumped up, threw a shawl over her nightgown, and hurried downstairs, trembling. There was nobody in the sitting room. The piano was silent. She ran to Mrs. Dent's bedroom and called hysterically, Emmeline! Emmeline! What is it? Asked Mrs. Dent's voice from the bed. The voice was stern, but had a note of consciousness in it. Who was playing the Maiden's Prayer in the sitting room on the piano? I didn't hear anybody. There was someone. I didn't hear anything. I tell you there was someone, but there ain't anybody there. I didn't hear anything. I did. Somebody playing the Maiden's Prayer on the piano. Has Agnes got home? I want to know. Of course Agnes hasn't got home, answered Mrs. Dent with rising inflection. But you've gone crazy over that girl. The last boat from Porter's Falls was in before we went to bed. Of course she ain't home. I heard you were dreaming. I wasn't. I was broad awake. Rebecca went back to her chamber and kept her lamp burning all night. The next morning, her eyes upon Mrs. Dent were wary and blazing with suppressed excitement. She kept opening her mouth as if to speak, then frowning and setting her lips hard. After breakfast, she went upstairs and came down presently with her coat and bonnet. Now, Emmeline, she said, I want to know where the Slocums live. Mrs. Dent gave a long, strange, half-lidded glance at her. She was finishing her coffee. Why? She asked. I am going over there and find out if they have heard anything from her daughter and Agnes since they went away. I don't like what I heard last night. You must have been dreaming. It don't make any odds whether I was or not. Does she play the Maiden's Prayer on the piano? I want to know. What if she does? She plays it a little, I believe. I don't know. She don't half play it anyhow. She ain't gotten here. That wasn't half played last night. I don't like such things happening. I ain't superstitious, but I don't like it. I'm going. Where do the Slocums live? You go down the road, over the bridge, past the old grist mill, then you turn to the left. It's only a house for half a mile. Can't miss it. It has a barn with a ship and a sail full on the cupola. Well, I'm going. I don't feel easy. After 2 hours, Rebecca returned. There were red spots on her cheeks. She looked wild. I have been there, she said, and there isn't a soul at home. Something has happened. What has happened? I don't know. Something. I had a warning last night. There wasn't a soul there. They must have been sent for her to Lincoln. Did you see anybody to ask? Asked Mrs. Dent with thinly concealed anxiety. I asked the woman that lives on the turn of the road. She's stone deaf, I suppose you know. She listened while I screamed to her to know where the Slocums were, and then she said, Mrs. Smith don't live here. I didn't see anybody on the road, and that's the only house. What do you suppose it means? I don't suppose it means much of anything, replied Mrs. Dent coolly. Mr. Slocum is a conductor on the railroad, and he'd be away anyway, and Mrs. Slocum often goes early when he does, to spend the day with her sister in Porter's Falls. She'd be more likely to go away than Addie. And you don't think anything has happened? Rebecca asked, diminishing distrust before the reasonableness of it. Land, no. Rebecca went upstairs to lay aside her coat and bonnet, but she came hurrying back with them still on. Who's been in my room? She gasped. Her face was pale as ashes. Mrs. Dent also paled as she regarded her. What do you mean? She asked slowly. I found when I went upstairs that little nightgown of Agnes's on the bed laid out. It was laid out. The sleeves were folded across the bosom, and there was a little rose between them. Emmeline, what is it? Emmeline, what's the matter? Oh! Mrs. Dent was struggling for breath in great choking gasps. She clung to the back of the chair. Rebecca, trembling herself so she could scarcely keep on her feet, got her some water. As soon as she recovered herself, Mrs. Dent regarded her with eyes full of the strangest mixture of fear and horror and hostility. What do you mean talking so? She said in a hard voice. It is there. Nonsense. You threw it down and it fell that way. It was folded in my bureau drawer. It couldn't have been. Who picked that red rose? Look at the bush, Mrs. Dent replied shortly. Rebecca looked at her. Her mouth gaped. She hurried out of the room. When she came back, her eyes seemed to protrude. She had, in the meantime, hastened upstairs and come down with tottering steps, clinging to the banisters. Now I want to know what all this means, she demanded. What means? The rose is on the bush, and it's gone from the bed in my room. Is this house haunted or what? I don't know anything about a house being haunted. I don't believe in such things. Be you crazy? Mrs. Dent spoke with gathering force. The color flashed back to her cheeks. No, said Rebecca shortly. I ain't crazy yet, but I shall be if this keeps on much longer. I am going to find out where that girl is before night. Mrs. Dent eyed her. What be you going to do? I'm going to Lincoln. A faint, triumphant smile overspread Mrs. Dent's large face. You can't, said she. There ain't any train. No train? No, there ain't any afternoon train from Falls to Lincoln. So I am going over to the Slocums again tonight. However, Rebecca did not go. Such a rain came up as deterred even her resolution, and she had only her best dresses with her. Then the evening came a letter from Michigan, which she had left from nearly a week ago. It was from her cousin, a single woman who had come to keep her house while she was away. It was a pleasant, unexciting letter enough, all the first of it, and related mostly how she missed Rebecca, and how she hoped she was having pleasant weather and kept her health, and how her friend Mrs. Greenaway had come to stay with her since she had felt lonesome the first night in the house, how she hoped Rebecca would have no objections to this, although nothing had been said about it, and since she had not realized that she might be nervous alone. The cousin was painfully conscientious, hence the letter. Rebecca smiled in spite of her disturbed mind as she read it. Then her eye caught the postscript. That was in a different hand, purporting to be written by the friend Mrs. Hannah Greenaway, informing her that the cousin had fallen down the cellar stairs and broken her hip, and was in a dangerous condition, and begging Rebecca to return at once, as she herself was rheumatic and unable to nurse her properly, and no one else could be obtained. Rebecca looked at Mrs. Dent, who had come to her room with the letter quite late. It was 9:30, and she had gone upstairs for the night. Where did this come from? She asked. Mr. Applecrom brought it, she replied. Who's he? The postmaster. He often brings the letters that come in on the late mail. He knows I ain't anybody to send. He brought yours about your comin'. He said he and his wife came over on the ferry boat with you. I remember him, Rebecca replied shortly. There's bad news in this letter. Mrs. Dent's face took on an expression of serious inquiry. Yes, my cousin Harriet has fallen down the cellar stairs. They were always dangerous, and she's broken her hip, and I've got to take the first train home tomorrow. You don't say so. Ugh, I'm dreadfully sorry. No, you ain't sorry, said Rebecca, with a look as if she leaped. You're glad. I don't know why, but you're glad. You're glad. You've wanted to get rid of me for some reason ever since I came. I don't know why. You're a strange woman. Now you've got your way, and I hope you're satisfied. How you talk. Mrs. Dent spoke in a fairly injured voice, but there was light in her eyes. I talk the way it is. Well, I'm going tomorrow morning, and I want you, just as soon as Agnes Dent comes home, to send her out to me. Don't you wait for anything. You pack what clothes she's got, and don't even mend them. And you buy her a ticket. I'll leave money, and you send her along. She don't have to change cars. You start her off, and when she gets home on the next train. Very well, replied the other woman. She had an expression of covert amusement. Mind you do it. Very well, Rebecca. Rebecca started on her journey the next morning. When she arrived 2 days later, she found her cousin in perfect health. She found, moreover, that the friend had not written the postscript in her cousin's letter. Rebecca would have returned to Ford Village the next morning, but the fatigue and nervous strain had been too much for her. She was not able to move from her bed. She had a species of low fever induced by anxiety and fatigue, but she could write, and she did, to the Slocums, and she received no answer. She also wrote to Mrs. Dent. She even sent numerous telegrams with no response. Finally, she wrote to the postmaster, and an answer arrived by the first possible mail. The letter was short, curt, and to the purpose. Mr. Amblecrom, the postmaster, was a man of few words, and especially wary as to his expressions in a letter. Dear Madam, he wrote, your favor received. No Slocums in Ford's Village. All dead. Addie 10 years ago, her mother 2 years later, her father 5. House vacant. Mrs. John Dent said to have neglected stepdaughter. Girl was sick. Medicine not given. Talk of taking action. Not enough evidence. House said to be haunted. Strange sights and sounds. Your niece, Agnes Dent, died a year ago, about this time. Yours truly, Thomas Amblecrom.
I knew it.
Right? Like, the whole time you're sitting there going, there's no way. There's no way this girl is still alive. Like, it's not possible, but where is she?
So I have to say, not putting your fingers in someone else's pudding
is
a heck of a phrase.
Don't burn your fingers on somebody else's pudding, Maria.
But they knew the whole time.
They knew the whole time, and they didn't tell her. I find it very interesting, but then again, if they had told her, there would be no story. I love, like, it's like the excuses, you know? Nothing bad could possibly have happened. I'll keep letting myself be reassured until you absolutely cannot not accept the truth anymore.
I mean, yes, there would not have been a story, but also that entire story could have been avoided.
Duly avoided.
If people just decided not to keep secrets from each other.
That is the novel I'm reading right now, and it's not even good, but the whole... So it's one of those things where I picked it up because the premise was really interesting, where the main character, every time she meets somebody, she gets a slip of paper with like a name and an amount of time on it. She's basically being told how long she's going to spend with each person. So she gets like a slip of paper that might say Steve, 3 months. And so she knows that relationship's going to end in 3 months. So... like, the author seems to want to toy with the concept of, like, are you going to let that actually dictate your feelings? And are you going to manufacture your own demise because you're constantly like, oh, well, it's going to end in 3 months, so I might as well not get attached. She's all of a sudden thrown in that this person has a congenital heart defect and is, like, basically dying. And we just went completely sideways. And the whole thing, all of these, like, fights and all of the conflict in this book could have been avoided if she just freaking told people. Mm-hmm. That she's dating. A, I have this really weird thing. Or B, by the way, I have a congenital heart defect. She hid it from literally everyone.
I feel like that's the worst way to create conflict.
Yeah, it's not... There's a reason I hate, like, the third act breakup trope, because it's like, if people just talked to each other, 90% of the dramatic conflicts that happen in, like, relationship novels would be avoided if people just freaking talk to each other.
Yeah, I think, too, that's a lot of what soap operas base their conflict on.
Like miscommunication
And it's just really frustrating to watch.
Yeah.
And obviously you, as the audience, know all the answers and who's doing what, but you're just looking... If anyone just told the truth, they could solve all of their problems.
Yeah. None of this would happen if people just talked. I really like the atmosphere in this one, because it's just this, like, creeping sense of unease throughout the whole thing. And...
oh, yeah, it's obvious that Mrs. Dent is up to something.
Yeah. Like, the way that she describes her face and her eyes constantly in the early portions. Now, here's the
question. We have to wonder what her motivation is.
Right. Like, does she not know she did it? Does she... Every time she would get a spell, like, she would come over really queer and strange. Mm-hmm. As if she, like, almost didn't know. So it's like, right. Does she know that she killed the stepdaughter? Or is it that she's just, oh yeah, she knows and is just gonna keep hiding it as long as she can?
I wonder if she is, like, kind of having this psychosis where she still believes that the stepdaughter actually is alive.
Would make sense, because I feel like that's a trope that comes up a lot. I feel like I can't name a story that does it, but I know that happened. Oh, is it What Happened to Monday? No, not What Happened to Monday. I think it's called Monday's Not Coming. And the main character spends the entire book, this is a really good book. I think it's a YA novel, but the main character spends the entire book, like, her best friend has been missing and nobody seems to, like, care, and she's, like, freaking out. She's trying to find out what happened, but she's known what happened the whole time and keeps blocking it out. And she keeps, like, going back 3 years in time and reliving this same, like, week over and over again, because every time she remembers the truth, she's, like, psychotically breaks. It was really good. This shrub is quite refreshing.
Yes. So I had Emily sample. If you are on Instagram, or if you watch us on YouTube, or if you're also on TikTok, I made raspberry shrub using a recipe from 1911, and it seems that a lot of you guys were kind of horrified to watch me drinking vinegar.
I'm telling you, it's delicious. I do this all the time. Then again, I am the weirdo who drinks pickle juice, so this is not unusual to me.
Pickle juice is also vinegar.
Yeah. So, like, I will just straight up slug some pickle juice into my mug and then put water in. So I guess I realized I had already been doing this before I knew what shrub was.
You don't just straight up drink it, like, full-on vinegar.
No. It's like a concentrated syrup. Admittedly, though, and if you've read any of my comments on any of our videos, you would know that I did drink straight undiluted shrub once. I didn't know. I assumed it was like how they put Gatorade in a pitcher for us at the museum sometimes when it's, like, really hot, and so you just pour it into your cup. So it was the end of the day, and I just poured some into my mug, and I walked out towards the parking lot and took a huge swig and choked. And I was like, wow, that's a flavor. And after, like, 3 or 4 sips, I realized, like, it's not so bad. It doesn't burn as much anymore. But I got to work the next day, and I was like, yeah, so that shrub was really acidic. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, I poured some out, and I drank it, and it was, like, really strong. And they're like, you're supposed to dilute it. So I drank, like, half a cup of straight fruit-flavored vinegar.
It's really funny because the recipe just tells you to pour it over crushed ice.
Crushed ice, yeah, that's insane.
And apparently that is supposed to be enough, according to these instructions, to dilute it.
It's not.
No, I didn't think so.
I made it too strong at work today because I filled up my mug, like, mostly with water, and then put probably, like, no more than an inch worth on the top of the shrub, and then I topped up with water. It was still too strong.
How's this?
This is perfectly done.
Excellent.
Yeah. Like, there's just enough bite to it that it's interestingly flavored, but not super strong. But this is a drink that also would have been enjoyed by ladies at this time in this story.
That's right. Agnes was supposedly at her friend's house. You know what else?
Her friend Addie Slocum's.
You know what else I was thinking? People haven't changed.
No, they haven't.
All. Like, the culture of this book is like exactly the same as it is now, except obviously kids don't have a cell phone that mom can text and be like, where are you?
Yeah.
I also thought, and I think this is probably one of the things that really should clinch for you that Agnes is no longer alive, where she says, oh yeah, she and her friend just left town.
Yeah.
Without telling her stepmother.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just at an age, but no way.
Oh yeah, like...
No way. That is so irresponsible.
Oh my god. Like, I would have, like, okay, so we had these neighbors across the street, and they were... I think they were, like, born again Christian, so they were, like, real religious, and they used to take me to church with them sometimes, but they would send me home to my mother to ask, can I please go with my little best friend girl across the street? They're going to church, and they, I want to go. I don't know why I wanted to go so much as a small child, but...
I would think that it's just courtesy. If you're taking someone else's kid somewhere that you haven't already told
days
that
away
child's parents where you're going to be... You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just a courtesy, right?
Oh.
Even if you think, oh yeah, your parents will definitely be okay with it, you should still tell them that you're going to be somewhere other than the place you already discussed being.
And like, oh, I mean, she stays over. Oh, they probably went up to the church social. Oh, they probably did this. I'm just going to make assumptions about what is happening with my stepdaughter. Like, that is so suspicious.
Yeah, it was either that, like, she wasn't alive anymore, or the stepmother is so negligent that she doesn't care, which both turned out to be true. Yeah.
So the real question is whether it's like, like you said, is all of this on purpose or not? Because, so she obviously... Well, I don't know, she went over to the Slocums, quote unquote, to find out, oh yeah, like, Mama Slocum was all up to her elbows in grapes and her hands were all stained. Like, did she make that up?
So what?
Right. Did she make that, but like, did she make that up? Did she legitimately believe that? Like, how far is she willing to go to cover this up? Which makes me wonder, she actually might not, she might have broken. She might not actually realize that she's dead.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing was, oh yeah, they like going because there's boys.
Right.
No, she's not. She's too young for that. That was another thing. I was like, man, people have not changed.
Have not changed. She's 16. Come on. Like...
She needs to graduate school.
So I realized I think I stumbled over my words a little bit when this happened, but she fixed the nightie, and then the nightie was laid out on the bed with the rosebud clutched, like, in the sleeves, as if it were, like, arms crossed over a chest, but then the rose is back on the rosebush. So the rosebush... I find it interesting because every time it freaks out, it's basically trying to almost point out the lie that's happening.
Yeah.
Like, it waves violently when dentists...
And also, too, the fact that there's only one flower still on it, because it is remarked that it's too late in the year for roses.
Yes.
So it's not seasonably supposed to be there, which is another clue that there's something off.
There's something off. And I'm curious about the Maiden's Prayer. I want to know what that sounds like. I didn't actually end up looking it up after I read this the first time.
I'm not familiar with that one either.
Yeah. It seems like, whether it's just the title, or I wonder if, like, the song, if there's lyrics that have any kind of clue or a hint that we would have known if we were contemporary to the story. Like, if that would have stuck out to us as another clue.
Well, I mean, we can look it up.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Hold on.
And we're back. So it was a short 3-minute piano-only piece with lyrics written later on. But it's very, like, has lots of trills and it's very twinkly.
Yeah, I think it seems like it was a well-known and popular song. I think for the context of the story, the important thing about it is because we just looked on the Wikipedia page. It said it was an intermediate level piece that was used students.
Yeah.
So I think the message here is that it's reasonable to assume that that's something a teenager could have played.
Yes, like somebody who is studying piano at the very least. So like, a student of piano as opposed to
but not like a beginner.
Yeah.
And also not as, professional yet.
And as we were listening to it, I remarked that I could see how that would snap you out of a dead sleep because it had a lot of very high notes and it wasn't like a forceful piece, but it definitely had presence. So I could see how that trailing through a house would like snap you up as opposed to something dumb like Hurt and Soul. So the only thing I know how to play on piano. Oh, and the main through line of the Black Parade. So overall, I guess the questions that we have for you, dear listener, are: do you think Mrs. Dent was malicious or psychotic? Like, do you think she knew and was lying, or literally thought that everything was still fine?
Yeah.
And, my last question I was going to say, who do you think wrote the postscript on the letter that was from the cousin that was supposedly written by the friend? Like, oh, your cousin fell down the stairs and broke her hip and I can't care for her. I know I have a guess as to who I think, like, did it.
The ghost.
Oh, that could be an interesting one. I hadn't thought about the ghost.
What's your guess?
Mrs. Dent.
Oh.
Like, she wanted to get rid of...
to get rid of her?
To get rid of her.
Especially because she's the one who had the mail delivered to her.
Mm-hmm. So, and it was written in a decidedly different hand. Because in my thought, like, the cousin wrote the letter, sure, but why would she have not specifically said, I fell down and broke my hip?
Generally, you don't write with your hip, so...
Yeah. And, I mean, if anything had, in fact, happened to her, I feel like she would have said, oh, yes, I had my friend come to stay, and it was quite lucky because I fell and I broke my hip, and so she's been taking care of me, but all is well, yada yada. Like, she would have mentioned it, so that's why I feel like it is a fabrication.
See, if Mrs. Dent did that, then I think that would be an argument for the fact she was being intentionally deceitful.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, what do you think? Let us know in the comments below. Like, follow, subscribe.
You can find us on all major podcasting channels.
Yeah, presumably you have a podcast platform of choice if you've made it this far.
A preferred platform. So yeah, our any final thoughts about gothic tropes in this one besides, haunted house, young death, dead youth? That one pops up.
Secrets,
yes. And deceptiveness. Again, why didn't the freaking postmaster and his wife just say anything the first time? Then again, don't go burning your fingers in other people's pudding. Yeah,
I think Miss, what was his name? Amblecrom,
yeah, something like that.
He heard her saying she was going to collect her niece, so obviously she was not aware that her niece had passed away and decided it wasn't any of his business. They probably knew Mrs. Dent was a little funny.
Yeah.
Which I guess now there's your argument that she was not being intentionally deceitful and is genuinely living in delusion.
Yeah, this is a good question for the listeners. Yeah, alright. Well, leave it in the comments. And this has been the Haunted Heart Society Podcastle episode. I could not tell you.
I couldn't either.
And whenever you're listening to this, dear readers, we hope that, as the introduction of this book says, you are enjoying such spooky things with the wind and rain lashing at the panes, and preferably all the bridges washed out. That is the best way to enjoy ghost stories.
Yeah, we had a tease of a storm, and then it didn't materialize.
It fizzled out. Yeah, maybe it'll hit us in a little bit. In the meantime, stay haunted. It is almost time for us to emerge in our true forms.
Rising from the crypt.
Spooky vampires who like the cold way better than the hot.
I've just become so acclimated that it doesn't bother me.
This has been the other Emily.
And not Emily.
And we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.